What happens when one of Hollywood's most bankable stars walks into what should be a friendly, routine morning interview, only to discover that the host has no interest in promotion and every intention of creating controversy? What starts as lighthearted chatter quickly spirals into a hostile interrogation, where charm collides with hostility and dignity squares off against an agenda that feels more personal than professional. This was supposed to be another polished TV appearance, but instead, it turned into one of the most scandalous clashes daytime television has ever broadcasted. Before we dive into the video, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Tell me what you think about talk show hosts pushing guests into corners just to spark viral moments. Your thoughts matter, and trust me, you're going to have plenty after this story unfolds. Now, let's get back to the video. Robert Downey Jr. entered the View set with the swagger only he can bring, flashing that iconic, confident smile that has charmed millions across the globe. The audience erupted in applause, thrilled to see Iron Man himself live on stage. But lurking beneath the cheers was a tension nobody saw coming. Joy Behar wasn't interested in Marvel jokes or witty banter. From the very first question, her tone was sharpened like a blade. She was ready to strike. "So, Robert," Joy began, her voice dripping with edge, "you've built a career playing heroes. Iron Man, Sherlock Holmes, men who symbolize justice and morality. But let's get real. Isn't it just a bit hypocritical? The words hit the air like a punch, and suddenly the atmosphere in the studio shifted from excitement to unease." Robert's smile wavered, his expression flickering from charm to genuine confusion. "Hypocritical? I'm not sure I follow, Joy. Are you asking about the characters I play, or something else?" His voice carried calm, but his posture stiffened, signaling that he understood this was no ordinary question. "Oh, you know exactly what I'm talking about," Joy pressed, leaning forward with eyes narrowed like a prosecutor ready to expose a guilty witness. "Here you are, playing noble heroes, champions of justice and redemption. But let's not pretend. Your real life hasn't always matched those roles, has it? Let's talk about your past." The room froze. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the energy snapped from admiration to raw discomfort. Robert shifted in his seat, no longer the relaxed guest, but a man guarding his dignity against an oncoming storm. "Joy, I've been open about my struggles, my mistakes, and my recovery," he answered firmly. "I thought we were here to discuss my new project, not rehash the past I've already owned up to." "Oh yes, your struggles," Joy sneered, her voice heavy with disdain. "Your very public, very marketable struggles that just so conveniently turned into a miraculous comeback story. But let me ask, how do we know this whole redemption arc isn't just another performance? How do we know the real Robert Downey Jr. isn't still the same man he was 20 years ago?" Robert's legendary composure flickered with controlled fury. His jaw tightened and his tone sharpened as he replied, "Joy, I'll assume you mean that sincerely, but let me be very clear. My recovery, my growth, my family, these are not performances. These are the most authentic, sacred parts of my life." His words carried weight, silencing much of the audience, but not Joy. She smirked, almost reveling in his frustration. "That's exactly what someone performing would say, isn't it? Look, Robert, I'm not trying to be mean here. But let's be honest with our viewers. You've built your second career on this redemption narrative. From troubled star to Hollywood hero, it's a nice package. Very convenient, very profitable. The tension was so thick it could be cut with a knife." Whoopi Goldberg shifted uncomfortably. Sarah Haynes looked at her shoes, but Joy wasn't backing down. Instead, she doubled down and suddenly swerved the conversation into politics. "Let's talk about your voice off screen, Robert. You play these patriotic, flag-waving heroes. Yet when real political issues arise, you stay suspiciously quiet. Are you afraid of alienating fans? Is your silence part of the act too?" Robert's jaw clenched tighter, his measured patience giving way to a flash of anger. "Joy, I think you're conflating a lot of things here," he said, his tone cutting sharper than before. "And frankly, I'm starting to wonder what the real agenda is. Are we here to discuss my work, or are you simply trying to manufacture controversy?" The line drew murmurs from the crowd. Viewers could sense the actor was done playing along. For the first time, Joy faltered. Her eyes flickered with surprise at his pushback, but she quickly snapped back. I don't have an agenda, Robert. I'm asking what millions of people want to know. You play heroes. You rake in millions. Isn't it fair to ask if the man behind the mask is as heroic as the characters? Robert leaned in, his voice suddenly sharper, his eyes blazing with defiance. Fair to ask, Joy? Let me ask you, when you come to work and drag your guests through the mud, is that fair? When you weaponize someone's lowest moments just to create daytime drama, do you consider that heroic? His words struck like lightning, and the studio gasped, stunned at the brutal honesty. Joy stiffened, her voice cracking slightly but still defensive. I'm not tearing you down. I'm holding you accountable. Robert's patience snapped. Accountable for what, Joy? For being sober? For rebuilding my life? For being honest about my mistakes? You want to talk about performance? Let's talk about this. This performance you're giving right now. Pretending to be a journalist when you're really just ambushing a guest on live television. The studio audience roared with whispers, gasps, and uneasy laughter. Joy's face flushed crimson, her voice growing shrill. I've been doing this job for years. I don't need a Hollywood actor telling me how to conduct an interview. Robert shot back instantly, his words like steel. Then maybe you should act like you know how to do your job. Because this isn't an interview. This is an attack. And I think your viewers are smart enough to see the difference. The clash had gone from uncomfortable to incendiary. What started as a promotional appearance for a film had now transformed into a battle of egos, reputations, and raw humanity. And every word, every glare, every retort was pulling the audience deeper into the chaos. Joy's voice rose an octave, sharp and almost desperate. I am asking legitimate questions about your character, about your authenticity. The public has a right to know who they're idolizing. Her words cracked like a whip, but the force behind them suddenly seemed hollow, as if even she knew the ground she was standing on was shaky. Robert leaned back in his chair, his laughter bitter and humorless. The public already knows who I am, Joy. They watched me stumble, fall, and get back up again. They saw me fight for sobriety, rebuild my career, be a husband and a father, and stand tall in front of the world. What they're seeing right now is you trying to tear all that down, not because of truth, but because you want ratings. His voice thundered, leaving the studio rattled. Joy's face tightened, her lips pressed together, but she still refused to let go. I'm not tearing you down. I'm holding you accountable, she repeated, as though clinging to the phrase like a shield. But her voice lacked conviction, trembling slightly under the weight of Robert's intensity. Accountable? Robert snapped, his eyes blazing. Accountable for what, Joy? For surviving my own destruction? For refusing to be defined by the worst chapter of my life? You want accountability? Fine. I've been accountable every single day of the last 15 years of my sobriety. But what about you? What are you accountable for when you weaponize people's pain on national television just to create a viral clip? The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, whispers breaking through the heavy silence. Even Whoopi and Sarah looked frozen, unsure whether to step in or let the storm play out. Joy bristled, her voice now shrill with defensive anger. Don't you dare lecture me about journalism. I've been in this business longer than you've been acting. I've asked the tough questions of presidents, politicians, and celebrities, and I'll ask them of you too. Robert leaned forward, his tone low but cutting like a knife. Then maybe you should start acting like a journalist, Joy. Because what you're doing here isn't tough, questioning. It's cheap theater. You're not searching for truth, you're chasing a headline. His words hung in the air, every syllable sharp and merciless. The color in Joy's cheeks deepened, but she snapped back, her words rapid and biting. You've built an empire on being the comeback king. You've turned your mistakes into a brand. Isn't it fair to ask whether that brand is just another act? Isn't it fair to ask whether your redemption story is too perfect to be real? Robert's hands gripped the arm of his chair as he fired back. You think my sobriety is a brand? You think my family's a brand? Joy, my son is probably watching this right now with my wife, and you dare to call my life a performance? These are the most real things in my world. But you don't see reality. You only see opportunity. And that says far more about you than it does about me. Gasps filled the studio. The air was electric with tension, the kind of tension that makes viewers lean closer to their screens, unable to look away from the carnage. Joy smirked, trying to reclaim the upper hand. That's exactly what someone performing would say. Look, Robert, you can hide behind charm and sincerity all you want, but this comeback story of yours, it's too neat, too polished, too perfectly timed to not be questioned. My job is to ask the questions people at home are thinking, whether you like it or not. Robert's response came like a sledgehammer. No, your job is to respect your guests and treat them like human beings, not props for your agenda. You invited me here to discuss my work, and instead, you've turned this into an ambush. That's not journalism, Joy. It's bullying dressed up as accountability. The word bullying landed like a grenade. A ripple went through the audience as Joy's expression faltered, her smirk collapsing into something closer to panic before she hardened again. I am not a bully, Joy shot back, slamming her hand on the table with a crack that echoed through the studio. I am asking the questions that need to be asked. No, you're not, Robert shouted, his composure finally fracturing in full view of the cameras. You're not asking questions, you're making accusations. You're not holding me accountable, you're trying to humiliate me. And the saddest part is, you're willing to burn your own credibility to do it. The co-hosts exchanged horrified glances, Whoopi finally trying to intervene. Maybe we should step back for a moment. But Joy cut her off, snapping, No, Whoopi, this is important. Robert wants to sell his movie, but he doesn't want to answer for his past. That's not how it works. Robert's eyes narrowed dangerously. Answer for my past? Joy, I've answered for my past in courtrooms, in rehab, in front of my family, and in front of the world. I don't owe you another trial just because you think tearing me down will get you a viral clip? If this is your version of accountability, then what you're really practicing is cruelty masquerading as journalism. The words left the studio shaken into silence. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, afraid to miss a single frame of what was quickly becoming a career-defining moment, not just for Robert, but for Joy herself. Joy leaned forward, her face flushed with rage, her voice trembling with intensity. I'm not cruel. I'm asking the questions that viewers deserve answers to. Robert's voice cut through her protest like thunder. No, Joy. What viewers deserve is honesty, fairness, and respect, not this sideshow you're putting on. You want to talk about performance? This interview is the biggest performance of all, and you're the one acting, not me. The audience gasped again as Robert's words landed with devastating clarity, each one exposing Joy's tactics for what they were. The clash had now escalated beyond an interview into a public reckoning, with Joy Behar's reputation hanging by a thread and Robert Downey Jr.'s fury lighting up the studio like a wildfire. Joy's voice cracked under the weight of Robert's intensity, but she pushed forward anyway, her words coming out sharp and defensive. You can't just sit there and act like you're above real scrutiny. The public deserves to know if their so-called hero is anything more than a polished act. Robert rose slightly in his chair, his voice steady but burning with fire. Scrutiny? Joy, scrutiny is based on facts, fairness, and context. What you've been doing is dragging up the darkest chapters of my life, chapters I've already owned, just to twist them into weapons for your own spectacle. That's not scrutiny, it's cruelty, and everyone watching knows it. The studio went dead silent. The audience leaned in, caught between shock and fascination. Even Whoopi's attempt to intervene fell flat as the tension between Joy and Robert consumed the entire stage. Joy slammed her hand down again. This isn't cruelty, it's accountability. You waltz in here with your charm, your redemption story, your millions, and you expect me to ignore the real questions? I won't do it, Robert laughed, a sharp cutting sound with no humor in it. The real questions? Joy, you've had every opportunity to ask something meaningful. How my past shaped my craft, how my recovery influences my work, what I hope audiences take from my journey. But you didn't. You went straight for character assassination because you wanted a viral fight, and you got one. Joy's face flushed crimson, her eyes flashing with fury, but her words faltered. I'm doing my job. Robert leaned in, his eyes blazing with intensity. No, Joy. Your job is to host a talk show, to engage with guests, to entertain and inform. But today, you decided your job was to ambush me, to humiliate me, to strip me down in front of millions for the sake of controversy. And you know what? Congratulations. You've exposed yourself more than you've exposed me. Gasps echoed across the studio. Sarah's jaw dropped, Whoopi buried her face in her hands, and the crowd erupted in a mixture of murmurs and shocked whispers. Joy's voice trembled, but she lashed out one last time. "You don't get to tell me how to do my job." Robert stood, pulling off his microphone, his presence towering over the table. "And you don't get to disguise cruelty as journalism. You've turned accountability into a circus, and you've turned this show into a mockery of what it used to stand for. If this is what daytime TV has become, then it says a lot more about the hosts than it does about the guests." The audience roared in stunned disbelief as Robert Downey Jr. walked off the set, leaving behind chaos, silence, and a panel of co-hosts visibly shaken by what had just unfolded. Joy sat frozen, her face red, her hands trembling on the desk. For once, she had no snappy comeback, no sharp retort, just the weight of a confrontation that had spiraled completely out of her control. And here's the kicker: the cameras captured every second. By the time the clip hit the internet, it wasn't Robert's reputation being questioned, it was Joy's. Viewers demanded to know why she ambushed a guest, why she weaponized recovery, and why she turned a conversation into an attack. In trying to expose Robert, Joy had ended up exposing herself, and the fallout was nothing short of scandalous. And there you have it. What started as a routine interview turned into a live TV explosion that nobody will ever forget. But what do you think? Was Robert Downey Jr. right to call out Joy Behar, or was she just doing her job? Comment your thoughts down below, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more explosive stories like this one.